Hi, I'm Mason Duchatschek, and I want to welcome you to the Mason Duchatschek Show. I created it as a place where you can access expert ideas, strategies, and tools that can make you exponentially more valuable, if not indispensable, to the company you work for. And if you own a business, I want to help you make it much more profitable in the meantime and more valuable for down the road so you can attract more offers and bigger offers faster if you ever decide to sell it. My favorite topics are obviously related to business, to people, and the leaders who inspire them. My guest today is Jason Greer, co-author of the book People Matter Most and a labor relations expert featured in the Los Angeles Times, Forbes magazine, CNN. I've had him on before, and we really started just scratching the surface of this topic, and I invited him back today so we could dive in a little bit deeper. Jason, welcome, and thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mason.
Hey, today I wanted to talk about some things that are a little different than we did the last segment. Today, I really want to focus on the mechanics and tactics of unionization, because I don't think most people have any clue what's going on behind the scenes until they get hit with it, and by then it's too late. Specifically, I'd like to delve into the methods and the tactics used by both unions and management in unionization campaigns. And I'm hoping that you can share some insights into union strategies as well as some common missteps by companies, because it fascinates me and it should make for a relevant and practical discussion. You ready to roll?
Let's rock, bro.
All right. Jason, can you walk us through the stages of unionization and what each stage typically involves? Because there's a lot of people who have no idea. They don't have any idea how this stuff gets started. So could you just kind of walk them through the stages of unionization and what's usually involved in each stage?
Yeah, great question. I love this. So typically you could think of, there are three stages of unionization. There's the organizing stage, there's a negotiating stage, and there's contract settlement or a dispute. In the organizing stage, that's when union organizers are basically their professional friends. And they're going around trying to get to know your employees. They're asking questions about you and your organization. They want to know what managers are popular, what managers are unpopular.
In organizers, you're saying that unions have employees that they hire to go make friends with employees at companies,
Right.
to hopefully persuade them to consider unionizing. Correct?
100%. I mean,
Okay.
that's what they do. And let's say that your workplace is in the middle of, let's say, Washington, Missouri, right? And you look at, if the average demographic of the average employer it's a white organization, they're going to go out and get white organizers because they want to make sure that those organizers can get in where they fit in with your employees. Versus, let's say you're in California where, your workforce might be largely Hispanic and they speak Spanish primarily. They're going to get organizers that speak Spanish that can hang out with your employees. And it's not just a case of they speak Spanish. It's, if they are Mexican employees, they're going to get a Mexican organizer. If they're Puerto Rican employees, they're going to get a Puerto Rican organizer, because they want to make sure that they match up so they speak the correct lingo. And more importantly, they can start to infiltrate your organization.
And you say professional friends. Why is it important for them to be described as professional friends? Well, I find that interesting. Can you expound on that?
Call them professional friends because they want to make sure that your employees don't turn to you when they have concerns. They want to make sure that your employees don't come to you when they need someone to talk to. They want to be the ones. Look, we ran this campaign. I'll never forget this. We ran this campaign and the Teamsters, it was a group of employees. They were parking employees, largely Ethiopian. The Teamsters went out. They found an Ethiopian gentleman. They trained him on how to be a union organizer. And then they embedded him into that Ethiopian community. This is out in Minneapolis. And he hung out with these folks for the better part of 6 months. He babysat their kids. He went to church with them. He went to community events with them. He was their road dog. He was their boy. So by the time he started actually talking to them about the union, it wasn't a cold call, Mason. They went directly to him because they trusted him.
And the employer probably had no idea this stuff was going on. So what you're telling me, you just did I hear you correct? Said for 6 months, this guy worked this company's group of employees. And I'm sure that was completely under the radar of the employer, correct?
Absolutely, because the employer had no idea. I mean, most employers, let's be fair. Most employers work with their employees from 9 to 5, and then those employees go off to their own thing. right? So they had no idea this guy was in the community.
Wow. So these professional friends, AKA union organizers, who are specifically picked by the union to go into a group of employees and make friends and build trust.
Yes.
How do unions identify and capitalize on the vulnerabilities within companies? And what kind of tactics do they employ once they have these people in place?
It used to be they would just kind of show up and ask questions. These days, this is the day and age of oversharing, right? So what unions would do is they'll hang out on X, they'll hang out on Instagram, and Reddit is an amazing tool for union organizers because you have so many people complaining about their jobs, right? So it might be, let's say if you're, let's make up a Reddit handle because I love Reddit.
So
Let's
you're
say
telling me, and when employees go online and complain, that's like a flashing neon sign to unions that say, "Hey, come pay attention. There might be opportunity to unionize at this company."
I'll beyond a shadow of a doubt. If you have an employer, let's say, Mason, you have some clients that utilize Slack, right? They utilize Slack within their organization. Slack is a hell of a union organizing tool because people, it's like word vomit. It's like emotional vomit. They are putting all of this stuff out there. And then one employee starts talking to another employee, starts talking to another employee. And next thing you know, all this stuff is being submitted to the union, right? And then the union's like, we got a live one. Company ABC, this is what they said, this is what they said, this is what they said. So remember how I shared the example of the organizer where it took him 6 months to embed himself in the community? Man,
Yeah.
a well-trained organizer can embed him, her, or themselves within an organization within a month, if that, just based on
What kind
real-time
of stuff do they
communication.
do to embed? Do they, take people to football games or concerts or dinners or like what do they do?
It used to be they hung out with them, they had pizza with them, they had wings with them, they'd invite them over for Super Bowl parties, the stuff that people used to do to bond, right? Now here's what they do.
Right.
I'm available if you need someone to talk to. Hit me up on my IG, hit me up on Snapchat, hit me up on IG, whatever the case might be. They are just available. And it's amazing because in this day and age, Mason, we're so interconnected. I'm connected with people I went to grade school with, people I ain't seen in 40 plus
That's true.
years,
Me too.
right?
I am too.
But we're more disconnected than we've ever been because people, look, you talked about Gallup in one of our interviews. When you see all of these survey results that are coming across, across the board, that are coming out across the board, one of the most prevailing notions is workplace loneliness and interpersonal loneliness. People are alone, they're depressed, they're scared for the future. And when somebody comes around and says, can't guarantee you a perfect future, but I can guarantee you a better present than what you currently have, that's enticing.
It is. Well, why would someone not listen to that?
Why wouldn't they? Exactly.
So how how do you get them to not listen to things like that when you help companies protect themselves from unions who are trying to organize their employees? What can you do to counteract that kind of stuff?
Yeah. One of the things that you get to know some of these employees and you're like, you can't ask directly because it's a violation of the National Labor Relations Act, right? A labor law to ask directly, like, why did you think about joining a union? But you get to know some of these employees and you start to kind of hear a common theme. They were there for us. They advocated for us, or at least they're talking about advocating for us. When I go back to the employer and the employer's like, okay, what's going on? How do we fix this? Well, use some of the union's tools for your tools, for your ability to connect with your employees. If the employees are saying that the union wants to advocate for them, why don't you be the advocate for them? When employees say, well, at least the union's willing to listen to us, why don't you listen? And if you know that you are below
Good
the
idea.
market average, pay your employees. If you can afford it, pay your employees.
I'd argue you can't afford not to.
Exactly.
You and I've had conversations in the past, and one of the things that I found fascinating that I am confident that most employers have no idea exists until it is too late and there's nothing they can do about it. Could you talk a little bit about, I always refer to it as double agents, but salting. What is salting and how does it work?
Yeah, great question. So salting is unions actively train, and I say actively because it happens every day. They train a very nondescript employee or potential employee on how to embed themselves within your organization and create union organizing drives, right? So it looks something like this. Let's say, Mason, for your fantastic company workforce out.
That's like inviting ants to your picnic, Jason.
Without a doubt. It's like, come on, right? Eat the cake, eat the sandwich, right? Right? I won't bother you. But it's like for
You're right.
your incredible company workforce outcome. Let's say that you were hiring 20 employees, right? And I being the union, find out that you're hiring these employees. And I want to get a better sense as to what your employees think about you. And more importantly, how vulnerable are is your organization to organize it? I'll train, let's say, Ben. I'll train Ben on how to interview to make sure he's a good interview, but not a great interview, right? Good enough to get the job, but you're not sitting back saying, Ben might be the future CEO, right?
Gotcha.
If you have a 90-day probationary period,
you want Ben to get the job, but fly under the radar.
To fly under the radar. If you have a 90-day probationary period, Ben is good enough to keep the job. But again, he ain't somebody you're thinking, man, next week he's going to be on the fries like in Coming to America, right? You ain't thinking that, right? What Ben is doing the entire time, Ben is taking notes on you. Ben is taking notes on your employees. He's hanging out with your employees. He might be part of group text, right? Group chats. He's doing his data collection.
Is he going through files and things like that too? Do some of these guys go through files? And
I've only had one case where somebody went through a file, and I'll talk about that in a second, right? But Ben is ultimately learning everything he can about the organization and then reporting that back to the union. So by the time that you get hit by a petition, while you're trying to catch up, the union is, it's like you're trying to catch up, but the union is like Usain Bolt in his prime. They have such a large lead over you because they know your employees better than you know them.
Wow. What about another one of the tactics you've talked to me about in the past, churching?
Man,
can you tell our listeners about churching and what that is?
So one of the things, I don't want to talk politics, but I'm going to talk politics for a second, right? One of the things that we're seeing is sort of this Christian renaissance, right? Where you're linking politics to faith and all of these things, right? So you're seeing more people, even though numerically speaking, they say more people are leaving the Christian church. I would make the argument that there are quite a few people coming toward the Christian church. And what is happening is that if an organizer goes into a community, let's say the organizer goes into Troy, Alabama. Troy, Alabama, I spent a lot of time there. They are Southern Baptist to their core. So if I want to get to know your employees, I'm showing up to church. I'm hanging out in the ministries. I'm talking to the pastor. I'm hanging out with the congregants. And they're like, where'd you come from? And maybe I'm going to lie about it. Maybe I want to say, I came from in my thick Alabama.
You're going to lie at church.
Right. Right. And whatever that accent's going to be, I might be like, man, I'm from Texas or I'm from wherever. Right. So they bring you in, they put their arms around you.
Your job is to be a professional friend, right?
Is to be a professional friend.
If you're a union organizer, your job is to be a professional friend.
If I got the pastor co-signing for me, I got the mayor of the community co-signing for me, I got the elder ladies co-signing for me, right? Now all of a sudden, I'm a trusted friend. I'm a trusted ally, right? Church fed that, and now I'm involved in every aspect of the community.
Does the union provide organizers like the one you've just described in this case that would go and become part of the church? Do they provide them with additional assets where they can make donations and things like that to earn goodwill with the church and with the congregation faster?
Absolutely. Tithes, but we're not talking $10 tithes, right? We're talking $1,000 tithes, $2,000 tithes. Apartment allowances, car allowance, food allowance because you got to take people out to eat, right? I mean, the union is spending money in order to make sure that this SALT, right, this person who's embedded themselves in the community, comes across as a person who's just attempting to just be a good community member.
Wow. And I guess people let their guard down and spill their guts about what's going on with them personally and professionally. And I can only imagine that if a SALT realizes that an employee's having problems getting their getting their kids' college tuition paid, that would be a hot spot where they could talk about, well, geez, well, if were part of a union, we may be able to get better wages and better benefits where you can afford to send your kid to college. And they could see the real motivators behind the scenes with the employees. That's
Absolutely.
and most of these employers have no idea at all this is happening, completely under their noses, correct?
No, they have no idea it's happening. But Mason, here's another thing that we got to talk about. And especially in the fact that Joe Biden only has about another month and a couple of days to be president. Under the Joe Biden Labor Board, NLRB, it has made it harder because Joe Biden is very pro-union. It has made it harder for companies to fight back against unions because unions have been given so much leeway in terms of what they can do, and employer rights have been taken away from in many respects, right? So yeah, I give you an
Give me
example.
some examples, like how
Yeah.
so? Can you expound on that?
Yeah. So here's an example. One of the tools of union organizing campaigns, right, for employers who are seeking to keep the union out, is that what they call a captive audience meeting. The captive audience meeting is where they're talking to the employees, they being the management, maybe the consultants, and they're talking to the employees about, again, the pros and cons of joining a union with the hope that those employees don't join the union, right? Because for the average employee, all they've heard is the great stuff about the union, but they've never been met by some of the realities being part of the union. Biden's labor board just outlawed captive audience meetings. They said it's unlawful. They said it's illegal. So you, the employer, can't hold captive audience meetings. And captive audience meetings looks like this. If I have 2 employees in a room with me and I'm talking to them about not joining the union, that's a captive audience meeting and that's illegal.
Wow. So there's a lot of rules that employers probably, and especially, so let me share the picture that I'm seeing in my mind of this situation. If I'm an employer and there's a union that has been sending in salts and professional friends to get to know all of my people, all of their pains, all of their hopes, all of their dreams, finding out what their frustrations are, completely under the radar. Then I get a notice that says, hey, we're going to have a union election. Well, the union's got a huge head start on me.
Yes.
And there's a whole bunch of rules that chances are, I don't even know what they are, dictating what I can't do to protect my business from unionization. And I'm assuming that if I learn those mistakes through trial and error by doing things that I'm not supposed to do according to the rules that I probably don't know, that there are very expensive fines and consequences. Am I correct?
100%.
What
I mean,
kind?
here's the thing. A cardinal rule for employers to follow is this: tips and foes. You can't threaten employees. And I'm talking if your employees say that they want to join a union, you can't threaten them by saying, if you join the union, I'm going to fire you, right? Or we're going to close the facility.
That's
right?
reasonable. I get that.
Yeah, but you'd be amazed at the number of employers who, when they are faced with the idea that the employees want to join a union, they get scared. They become very reflective. They become very, very defensive, right? The second thing is you can't interrogate the employees. You can't walk up to an employee and say, hey, Mason, are you going to join the union?
Right. And that's a normal knee-jerk reaction that a lot of employers would have.
Absolutely. Especially, Mason, if you and I have been working together for 15 plus years, and I feel like we have a trust, we know each other's kids, all that stuff, I'm going to walk up to you and say, hey, man, what's going on with this union stuff? Not knowing that I violated the law, right? Another thing is promises. Employers cannot make what they call promises. Now, a union by law, A union is allowed to make any promise that they want to because the law says they don't have any power to make those promises happen. That's called mere pre-election propaganda. It's just like a politician saying, read my lips, no more new taxes, right? They'll say
Fair
whatever
enough.
they can get, right?
Right.
On the other side, if you're the employer and you hear the union making all these promises, man, there's not an employer across this country who wouldn't be like, look, I promise you that I can get you $2 more an hour. Just don't join the union. You might be thinking, I'm trying to save my organization, but you have no idea that ultimately I am dooming my organization because that's an unfair labor practice.
So what kind of consequences do companies get? Because some of them probably think, well, I won't get caught. I can just do that and no one's going to rat me out. Because I, like you said, hey, I've known this employee or that employee for a long time. We've worked together. I can have a conversation with them. They won't rat me out. I won't get caught. I can have that conversation. What are the consequences when that stuff goes south?
It's the biggest consequence is what we call a mandatory bargaining order, right? A mandatory bargaining order means forget the campaign. You are mandated to go directly to bargaining with the union.
Wow. So that's an instant forfeit. I've lost.
If those unfair labor practices are so egregious from the perspective of the labor board, you lost, brother. And now you're stuck with the union for the next 3 years because that's what the average contract is 3 years, right? And you'd be amazed at the number of employees who are like, especially after, Mason, the worst thing to happen to any employer is after they've settled the contract, the employees read the contract and they're like, the union told us they were going to get us this, this, and this, and they didn't get us anything.
And they're stuck for 3 years anyway. It's tough.
And they're stuck for 3 years.
Right. Wow. So, I've always talked about, pouring water on matches to keep things from sparking. What are some things that companies can do proactively to protect themselves from union tactics like home visits, insulting, and all this other stuff? What can they do to pour water on the matches so that they don't spark?
Outside of hiring my company, Greer Consulting, right?
Outside
of that, what I'll say is be present, but don't be distracted.
Can you expound on that?
Yeah. There are a lot of people these days who show up and they give the impression that they're paying attention, but their mind is 50 million light years away, right? You might think that you're hiding, and I'm talking about leaders, you might think you're hiding it really well, that your mind is here, here, and here, when your focus should be right here. But your employees, especially if they get to know you, they know if you're really not present. They know if you really don't care. They know if you say one thing, but you really mean something else, right? What I say to employers is this. If you've been working your employees a bunch of overtime or you've just been pushing them hard, the worst thing in the world you can do is order them pizza because that's what most employers do, right?
They're like, look, why is that the worst thing that they can do?
Because your employees will eat your pizza, but they hate your guts because they remember, look, you think buying them pizza in some form or another is like magic mushrooms. And all of a sudden they're going to be seeing unicorns and they're going to, be thinking, man, my employer sure loves me. Granted, I ain't seen my kids in the past 3 weeks because I've been working overtime, but he got me sausage pizza from Domino's. Look, they're going to be eating that pizza and they're going to be staring at you the entire time. And they're going to be thinking, yeah, I'll eat your pizza, but don't let me catch you in a dark alley because I'm going to beat the brakes off you because I hate
you. Sometimes it's that intense, huh?
It's always that intense, even if the employees are not outwardly intent.
How do you quell that or prevent that? Let's look at it from the employer's perspective. Maybe you got a bunch of work to do. You got a huge order and you don't have enough time to staff up. So you are paying people overtime and you are working them hard. You're the boss. What do you do, Jason?
You be honest with them while you're doing it first, but you also give them incentive for why you're doing it also.
Give them incentive.
I'll give an example. Either you increase their pay so that the time away from their family at least matters enough that they can afford a better quality of life for their family. You take it on the chin and give your employees an additional day off so they can spend time with their families, or they can spend time doing whatever they want to do.
So you're basically acknowledging it and making it up to them without having to be asked.
Yeah, you got to, because here's the thing. Your employees want you to succeed. I think
Sure.
that's what employers don't understand.
Right.
You can look at young employees and say they don't want to work. They want to work,
Sure.
but they want to be part of whatever it takes to make this company successful.
Right.
So make them feel like I'm not just looking at you as just another body that's out there making me money.
Right.
It's, we worked you hard for these past 3 weeks. We know you're exhausted. I'm so sorry, but I'm not sorry because we need to get those orders out. But we're going to take 2 days off.
Good.
And those 2 days off are up to you to make a determination as to when you need them. Just give us ample warning.
Jason, you shared some gold today, and I'm going to invite you on for even another podcast. Like, I love having you on here because, like, I have been fortunate enough to get to spend a lot of time with you, and I know how you interact with people and interact with companies, and you make hard things look easy. And it's taken you many, many years to develop the skill and the sensory acuity to pick up on the things that most people miss. So I'm definitely want to have you back, and who knows, we may do this on a regular basis. I know
Love
you're
it.
tough to catch, but for people that want to learn more about you, your company, what you can do to help them, they wouldn't know what to do if they found out that there was union talk, or heaven forbid they got the message that there was going to be a vote. They don't know where to start. How do people reach out to you? How do they learn more about you, and how you can help them?
Yeah, definitely hit me on my website, hiregci.com. You can also hit me on my other website, askjasongreer.com. I'm on IG, I'm on TikTok and Twitter, but I really don't use it a lot. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So look me up on LinkedIn. I pair with a lot of people. I love having great conversations. We post daily. So use me as a resource. Talk to me. Just interact with me. I love it.
Jason, I appreciate you being here. And I just think there's a lot of folks out there that have no idea what's going on as it relates to this topic. And when they do find out, it's a painful, embarrassing, and expensive lesson
Yes,
that
sir.
I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. So I appreciate you being here and sharing your wisdom and sharing your knowledge, and definitely want to invite you back soon. Thanks for coming today.
Hey, Mason, it's always a pleasure, brother. Thank you.
Thank you.